Welcome back to the rules of engagement. Before we get started analyzing Ret versus Flash Game 3, let me remind you guys, if your graduation is coming up, you're wondering what you want to do going forward as far as education, as far as potential careers, if you're mildly interested in even potentially checking out the future of working with the video game design team, working with the esports team on the production or graphic design standpoint, like MLG, etc., go to www.fullsail.edu/MLG. Full Sail is a great source of education into fields like video animation, 3D design, audio engineering, etc. All it takes is just go there, tell them what you're interested in, and they'll tell you more information about the programs they offer so you can have a little bit better idea of what potential careers could be ahead of you. Now getting into Ret versus Flash game number 3. A couple things I want to talk about here is basically knowing when to make an intelligent sacrifice, right? That's something a lot of players don't know how to do, and it's a very important skill set. We're going to talk about Vipers with the Roach Hydra composition, and then the late game impact of a weaker economy. So we're going to jump in this replay a little bit further on at the 13-minute mark. So both players have advanced their economy pretty well here. Things are going pretty decently for both players. A little bit of action happened earlier. Nothing too crazy, though. And this is a point now when Flash is pushing out, right? He's pushing out. He's got, 1-1 Marine Marauder, Hellion, Widow Mine, and he's looking to trim away one of Ret's 4 bases, right? Push the creep back, do some damage. So he's going in here, killing some creep. And then he's going to say, I don't want to walk too far on the creep, so let's cut back down here and see if we can go ahead and kill this 4th base. Now, Ret here, if you look, he doesn't have a big army right now. He's been doing what Ret does, which is build a crap ton of drones, right? He's lost a few, but he's down to 83, which is still a lot of drones. So he's been doing what he's doing Ret stuff, 83 drones. He can't quite take on this army quite yet, right? And if you look at Ret's production tab, 10 Hydralists, 6 Roaches, 2-2 is 30 in-game seconds from completion, which is very, very fast. It's like 20 real-time seconds. So he's moments away from being strong. But his 4th base is in jeopardy. One thing that is very, very, very important as a player of any race in Starcraft 2, you don't always have to feel compelled to defend your bases. This is something that especially Zerg players, especially great Zerg players like Lenok, especially watch some of his games, you have to understand that losing a hatchery costs you 350 minerals, right? Rebuilding hatchery, rebuilding drone, plus whatever that hatchery would mine for the next 100 seconds, however long it takes to rebuild. So if you don't even have enough drones to saturate the hatchery, that's actually nothing, right? So in this case, he does have drones. But as long as he gets the drones out, it's the hatchery plus mine time, and you don't want to lose that. It's not good. But it's much, much, much better to lose that. And then you're down to 3 bases on 80 drones going hive. You're still fine, right? You're still in a fine position. Then it would be to get your army slaughtered, try and defend it. Even if there's some situations where maybe you can defend it, and you might be able to save the base, but you'll take such a bad trade, it's actually worth sacrificing. If you go to YouTube, youtube.com/officialmljc2, check out Polt versus Life Game 4. That was a situation where Life was in great shape. He was building Vipers. Polt sends a giant army with a ton of tanks attacking Life, I believe it was his 4th base. And Life pushes away with Roach Hydra and barely saves his hatchery. But in the process, he loses like 140 food to Roach Hydra because he loses some guys that are rallying in as well. And if you wait, he could have sacked the base, and 20 to 30 in-game seconds later, he would have had the Vipers out with a Bonding Cloud, and the tank force would have been, he could have slaughtered it easily. So that was the case where Life ended up losing that match because he didn't sacrifice his 4th base. This is a case right here where if Ret tried to defend this, he would lose the match as well. So while losing the 4th base isn't good, if you can preserve your drones, it's much better to lose the hatchery than it is to take a poorly timed fight. Taking a fight right before your 2-2 finishes, before your army is fully rallied together. And now, of course, even though he lost the 4th base, what's the situation? He's up by 13 drones. 13 workers is good. He's on 3 base to 3 base. That's good. It's not great, but it's not... Ideally, he'd be 4, but it's not the end of the world. But he gets his Hive tech is on the way, right? He's close to getting Hive, and he's going to be heading upgrades, right? Although his opponent will tie it up by the time he gets Hive. But the idea is, it's not a terrible situation for Ret, right? The foods are still even. Ideally, he'd be a little bit ahead, but it's not terrible. The foods are still relatively even. He's going to Hive. He's got good tech. Losing the 4th base isn't the end of the game. He's just slightly behind now. But if he tried to defend that, he would have instantly lost the game. So knowing when to sacrifice something take the best of a bad situation is a very important skill, and Rhett does that very, very well here. So going forward, you know, Flash is going to try to clear out more creep. Flash, of course, is on the retreat because he knows that Rhett did not take that fight, which means Rhett's built up a big army by the time he killed the hatchery and was able to continue pushing on. So Flash is not going to commit to a fight most likely. He's just trying to clear creep. He's going to see what's out there. He sees all these Evo chambers, so he knows Vipers are on the way. And now he's like, well, maybe I might want to take a fight before Vipers come out, right? So he's like, okay, let's see what I can do here. He sees this army. And again, this is, you know, the idea that I could try to fight that, but with the concave he has and a potential flank, I'd rather try to force him to go over to Widow Mines, even though they actually, the Broodings take almost all the hits, and head on out here and try to escape. So Flash is just trying to buy time to get his army out here, do as much damage as he can, but escape. And then if we take basically the skinnier things again, Rhett's actually now slightly ahead in food because Flash took some losses. Of course, those losses were a trade-off for killing a ton of creep, so it's not just about food. Going forward here, though, we're in a situation where now Flash is taking his 4th base. Rhett is taking his 4th base at roughly the same time. Upgrades are going to be fairly even as long as Rhett starts his right now. Flash has a stronger army right now, but Vipers can always equalize things. So that's the next thing I want to talk about, is using Vipers with your Roach Hydra army. So that's why Rhett backs up here. He knows this point in the game, when both players are nearing a max army, Roach Hydra gets absolutely mauled by Marines and Marauders. Absolutely mauled. Marine Marauder Medevac will destroy Roach Hydra every day of the week, right? And the reason why that is simple. You just look up the stats of the units, write them down in a column by column, and you notice Marines just are way better than Roaches or Hydralists. Now, the reason why Roaches and Hydralists can work is because you can produce them easy off hatcheries. Your opponent, to get a lot of Marines, has to build all these barracks, all these reactors. So it's a bigger investment to get a large Marine army than it is to get a large Roach Hydra army. And hopefully by the time they get a very big army, you have the Vipers out in play. And that's what the next thing I want to talk about, using Vipers with that army. So again, he's going to have to lose his 4th base because he doesn't want to charge down this choke point. When Flash sees the concave at the top, of course, he's not going to go up there as well. He's going to get out while the getting's good. But now this is the point when Rhett does want to take an engagement, because now he has the Vipers in play. All right, so we're just going to play this forward just a little bit. And right there, the thing I want to point out is the use of the Blinding Clouds here. So if you think about what Blinding Cloud does, for those of you guys who don't know, any unit, friendly or enemy, that's in a Blinding Cloud has its range reduced to melee. Ground units only. That's in fact there, just ground units. So what happens is when he puts a Blinding Cloud here and here, the Terran units in this zone, they basically go to melee, and if they're melee range and attack move, they'll try to walk up to your opponent to get the damage done, right? The reason it works so well with Roach Hydras is because as soon as you hit those Blinding Clouds, their units are going to instinctively walk forward just because they want to get into action, they want to attack. If they're melee to attack, they have to close the distance. And as they walk forward, all these Hydras, these guys right here in the back, these Hydras right here, those guys all of a sudden have targets now when before they were out of range. So you're getting extra damage done. The other thing that's great is your opponent is just naturally on attack move. They see Blinding Clouds. They know if their units charge forward, they'll be slaughtered, so they have to run away. If you're on Roaches and Hydralists, as soon as these units back away, Rhett's going to get a bunch of free kills. Because as the Terran army turns around and backs up, the Roaches and Hydras get a couple volleys off. They kill maybe 10, 20 fooded guys for free. Well, maybe only 10 food, but you get a decent number of free kills by using those Blinding Clouds. It's a great use of it. If you are using Speedlings or Banelings, Blinding Cloud isn't quite as useful against a Bio army because the Terran's already going to be backing up. So as they back up again outside the Blinding Cloud, you don't get the same quantity of free hits because you don't have the range. Yes, Speedings are slightly faster, so they'll run down and chew at the Marines a little bit with their little nippy claws. But it's not going to be as big a deal as your entire army getting that giant volley off because the Speedings that will bump into the back of the other Speedings won't get those attacks off. So Blinding Cloud, much more effective with the Roach Hydra composition. But you can see here exactly what's going to happen. Flash is going to have to immediately try to retreat his units when he realizes that it's a bad engagement because only a few of his guys can attack. As he retreats, more of these units fall. All the Widow Mines get forfeit, right? Because there's nothing to tank for them anymore, so the Roach Hydra kills them. Another Blinding Cloud, more retreating units. And all this blood on the ground is primarily Terran blood, right? And that's because the Blinding Clouds, again, every time you make the units move, they're not attacking. And versus Roach Hydra, you are attacking. If you're Speedlings, the units are moving anyway, so it's not quite as effective. Of course, still versus Siege Tanks and stuff, you might want to open an attack like that. But in general, it's very effective with Roach Hydra composition. Now, of course, we can see how well he traded against a large Terran army, but now, even though it's a much smaller Terran army because he no longer has the Vipers, it's actually going to trade pretty even. Of course, he has the bigger army here, and it's Hydras versus Marauders, which is an exactly even battle. But it's still he's trading evenly, right? He pushes him back with more units, but as the reinforcements come, he has to retreat or he'll basically run out of units. So Vipers, very effective with Roach Hydralisk. When you use that composition, just try to put them slightly. You want to basically have 3/4 of the Blinding Cloud on the units and 1/4 behind the units, so that even as they back up, they'll have a harder time attacking. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the impacts, the late game impacts of a weaker economy. We've noticed that Rets actually traded well into major engagement, but what else did we notice? This base was killed, and then it was killed again. This base here was killed by drop. We might have missed that, but that's what happened. And then Flash has done a little more damage at drops. But basically, he's killed this base twice. He's killed this base once. Meanwhile, he's been expanding and macroing like the world's best macro player that he is. And he's on 5 bases, right? So now it's a situation where Flash has a better economy. Why? Because he's hitting his mules well, and he's got actually even more bases in his Zerg operation, as well as an even worker count. And what that means? Well, this late in the game, right? And because Rhett's been taking the engagements well, again with great blinding crowds, he's pushing forward. He's trading very well. It's not just because Flash has a stronger economy doesn't mean he's going to win the battles. Because even though Rhett has a weaker economy, he still has had enough to get that max out army. In fact, right now he's at 193 food. So, yes, you've hurt Rhett's economy, but he's still going to get max army as long as he takes good engagements. What it does mean, though, if your opponent is on weak economy, he's going to have to. He doesn't have the economy to both max out the army and, as well as maxing out, build the static defense, right? He doesn't have, often at this point in the game, 21 minutes, a Zerg might have 2,000 minerals in the bank, right, along with the maxed out army. They could build 3-4 spine cores here, a spore core here. They could build spines and spores over here, the spines here, and we can notice Rhett hasn't had the money to do that. Why? Because he has a weaker economy. So yes, he can get the maxed army, but his ability to remax it out and build stack defense is what suffers. So if you know you have a better economy than your opponent, you don't necessarily always want to just go head-to-head in a big smash-on fight if they have a very scary army, like the Roach Hydra Viper. Yes, as long as you can trade well, it's still a good idea. But if you don't think you can trade well, instead of going for the straight battle, say, okay, he has a weak economy, but he's got a very scary army. That very scary army can't be everywhere, and he doesn't have the money to build stack defense, so I can start trying to spread him out. And as I spread him out, I'll start getting the decent trades I need, and as we trade, because he has a weak economy, he won't be able to reproduce his units so well. So even though you just get in there, you do attacks everywhere you can do them, right? Small little forces. As long as you trade decently, you don't get annihilated. All these small trades are in your favor because remember, a second ago, Flash was at about 150 food. He was letting his production kick in for the remax. Rhett was at 200. Now Flash is at 160. Rhett's at 170. All right, so he's pretty much almost closed the gap. As his production kicks in, Flash will max out momentarily. Rhett's still at 177. Now Flash is at 180, 190, right? Flash is skyrocketing while Rhett can't. The reason Rhett can't skyrocket his supply is because he has a weaker economy. And while Flash couldn't take the big engagement very well because of Vipers, these small engagements here, you kill 3 roaches, some speedings here. You kill a few drones there. That all adds up. And with a weaker economy, he can't have the mass spine cores, he needs to buy time. So again, you go in here, you knock out this hatchery, right? Rhett's still stuck at 170 food. He hasn't even been, all that he's lost in the last 30 seconds has been that force right there. But yet, he hasn't been able to rebuild more than that small force because, again, his economy is so much lower than Flash's. While as Flash, yes, he's been losing units, but he's instantly already remaxed because of that economy. So again, trying to trade as much as possible is what you want to do when you're ahead in economy. But if the army's very scary, it's Roach Hydra Viper and all you have is bio and you don't really want to go head-to-head with that, then what you want to do is take a lot of small battles where you don't have to take on the big armies straight away, but you can chip away at it, chip away at their hatcheries, their drones, make them rebuild something, and because their economy is weak, they can't rebuild it. So again, he still hasn't even taken on the main army, just chipping away at whatever pieces he can, but yet Rhett's now down to 125 and Flash is still at 192 food, right? And this is all, I mean, it's GG seconds away. It's all because Flash quickly realized, I've done massive damage to my opponent, but while I've been doing that, he's been able to tech up and get a very scary army. I tried to fight that army straight on, and I traded very poorly. Even though I had twice as economy, I probably lost twice as much. So the straight ahead battles may not be the way to go. I'll try to keep taking small battles where he can't really utilize all his spells, and his army is strongest when it's combined. So if I spread it out, take small battles, even if I don't trade super well. In fact, he did trade well because he controlled it so well. But even if you at home don't trade quite as well, as long as you trade decently, that's good enough when you have this spear economy. So sometimes, while trading is good, sometimes the best trades aren't in going for the army engagement, but in trying to spread out and do damage where you can. This wraps up the analysis on Flash versus Ret game number 3. We'll take a short break and be right on to the Q&A section.